Hey guys, and welcome to day 2 of Freak Week. So today's video is pretty freaky. It's a really creepy, bizarre story that I think you guys are gonna find very interesting. But before we get into that, today's episode of Freak Week was kindly sponsored by Shudder. If you have not heard me talk about Shudder, it is actually AMC's premium streaming service, and it's made specifically for people who love horrors, thrillers, and suspense movies. Shudder currently has the largest and fastest growing selection of curated horror content. And when you have a membership on Shudder, you have unlimited access to all of this content completely ad-free. And it's available on all of your favorite devices like iOS and Android. The membership is $5.99 per month or $56.99 per year. And I wanted to mention their new series, Creepshow, which I have been checking out, and it's really well done and entertaining. It's really good if you like scary content, but some of it freaks you out. You know, it's a little bit more lighthearted and comedic. The series is based on the famous film by George Romero, and it's basically these short little episodes, and each episode covers 2 scary stories within it. In the first episode, they cover a story called Gray Matter, which is actually written by Stephen King. It's really good. If you like this type of content, I think you will definitely like that show. But they have a huge selection. There really is something for everyone, depending on if you like newer content or older content. They just have a huge variety. So be sure to check out Shudder. It's the perfect time of year to start a free trial. Just go to shudder.com and use the code Kendall Rae to get a free 30-day trial. Just go to shudder.com and use the code Kendall Rae to start your free trial today. Like I said, guys, this is the perfect time to start the free trial because it's Halloween. So if you need to get in the spirit, be sure to sign up for that. Now let's go ahead and get into this video for today. Today we're going to be talking about the Keddie Cabin murders, which is an unsolved case that's truly bizarre and very creepy. So let's talk about the people that were involved in this case first. So this is Sue Sharp, and she was described as someone who was very quiet, reserved, and a very overall nice person. She had 5 kids, a 15-year-old son named John, a 14-year-old daughter named Sheila, a 12-year-old daughter named Tina, and 2 younger sons, Rick and Greg. Now, Sue for a long time was in a really bad relationship. It was not a good situation for her or her kids. Her husband was very abusive to her, and she wanted to leave for quite a while before she finally decided to make the move when she had 5 kids. I mean, that's gotta be really scary. But in 1980, she got the courage, and her kids ended up moving from Connecticut to the Keddie area in California. The reason that she went to Keddie specifically was because her brother Don lived there. She thought, you know, she'll have family, it'll kind of be a good spot to move to. It's very beautiful. She can kind of restart her life. Keddie is an area that's north of Sacramento. It's very woodsy and very beautiful. Sue did not have a lot of money to take care of her family. It was a very stressful situation for her. So when she first moved there, she actually just stayed in an extra trailer that her brother had. So they were all jammed up into a trailer until they were finally able to start renting a cabin. And they rented a cabin in the Keddie Resort in the rural Sierra Nevada community of Keddie. So it was April 11th, 1981. And that night, Sue's daughter Sheila actually had plans to stay at the cabin across the street. Another family lived there called the Seabolt family, and there was another girl around her age to hang out with. So Sheila went over there, and then Sue stayed at home in cabin 28 with her other 3 kids, Rick, Greg, and Tina. And they also had a friend over named Justin Smart. Sue's oldest son, John, and his friend Dana Wingate actually ended up staying the night there as well. So next morning, April 12th at 7 a.m., Sheila woke up from her sleepover and decided to head back home to her cabin. And what she walked into was a horrific sight. She discovered the bodies of Sue, John, and Dana in the living room. Sue's 2 youngest sons, Greg and Rick, and their friend Justin, who was sleeping over, were all found in their bedrooms completely asleep as if nothing happened. And her daughter Tina was nowhere to be found. And it's really hard to believe that they were able to sleep through this if this murder happened. I mean, this crime scene was absolutely terrible. I'll explain some of the details of it, but it was really bad, and there's no way that it was a silent crime. Like, you definitely would hear something. So that always stands out as very strange to people that they were able to sleep through this. The crime scene, like I said, was completely horrifying. There was blood all over the walls. John, Dana, and Sue were all found wrapped up with electrical wire, like bound that way. And at the crime scene, they found a bent steak knife, a butcher knife that was covered in blood, and a hammer. And it was later discovered that that steak knife was actually bent from the blunt force of it being used on someone. Sue was discovered laying on her side near the living room sofa. She was nude from the waist down and gagged with a blue bandana. It was clearly a passionate crime. Her throat was slashed, her chest was stabbed, John's throat was slashed as well. Dana had multiple blunt force head injuries, and she had also been strangled. All three of them actually had evidence of being hit in the head with that hammer. And there was an unidentified fingerprint on the railing kind of leading up to the cabin door outside. The cabin telephone had been left off the hook, the lights were turned off, and all of the blinds were closed. Now, one really interesting bit of information is that Justin Smart's mom, who, wasn't murdered, said that she found a bloodied jacket that she believes belonged to Tina in her basement. And she claims that she gave this to the police, but there is no record of this claim ever being made, and nothing was ever made out of it. So we don't even know if it's true. Marilyn's husband, Martin, also said that there was a hammer missing from their house. Now, they are pretty close to the Sharps cabin, so the hammer that was used in the crime scene could have been from their house. Police ended up saying that Martin Smart gave them almost too much information. He was just giving them endless clues, and he seemed to be constantly trying to push the suspicion away from him. So detectives started interviewing as many people as they could in the area, and they started with the Seabolt family. And they recalled seeing an unknown green van outside of the Sharp cabin at about 9 p.m. that night. They interviewed some other people in the area though, and others claimed that it was a brown car, and some people even mentioned that it had a flat tire. So like I said, the younger boys that were in the cabin that night that were completely fine did not hear anything and slept through it all. So they obviously had no witness statement or anything like that. But Justin Smart ended up being hypnotized by a specialist to see if they could draw out any information from him. And he was able to recall some facts from that night. He then claimed that he heard some sounds while him and the other two boys were trying to go to bed and watching TV in their room. And he also said that he saw Sue with two men, one with a mustache and long hair, and one that was clean shaven with short hair. He said both were wearing glasses. The suspects were described as being in their late 20s to early 30s. One was described as being 6 feet tall with dark blonde hair, and the other was about 5'7" with greasy black hair. So according to Justin, basically what he ends up remembering happened was that John and Dana came into the house and started fighting with the other two men that were there with Sue. He then claims that there was some fighting and Tina came into their room for a second, and then she quickly was taken out of the room and then taken out of the cabin completely. Based on Justin's description, these two composite sketches of the two unknown men were created and sent out. So while this was all happening, Tina was still nowhere to be found. They believe that she was abducted from the crime scene and taken somewhere else. And her case was actually investigated by the FBI. They did helicopter and dog searches through the whole area and could not find her. And it would go on like this for a long time. People thought maybe they would never find her. And it wasn't until April 22nd of 1984, almost 3 years after she had first gone missing, that someone called in an anonymous tip and said where they thought her body could be. And that's where they found Tina's skull. It was found over 50 miles from the crime scene in a completely different county. Near the remains, they also found a child's blanket, a blue nylon jacket, a pair of Levi's jeans with a missing back pocket, and an empty surgical tape dispenser. Now, whoever mentioned this tip on the phone was probably the person who did it, because they specifically mentioned Tina by name. Like, really, who else would know? So police started thinking, the person's got to be out there and they're feeling guilty, or they want it to be solved or something. So let's talk about some of the suspects that police had. So first, there's Martin Smart and Bo Bobetti. Martin Smart, like I said, was the father of Justin Smart, which was the friend that was found alive in the cabin. So after doing a little more investigation, they found out that Martin had a history of being pretty abusive to his wife, Marilyn. And there are reports that Sue Sharp was kind of helping coach Marilyn because she had also been through an abusive relationship. So she was trying to coach her into leaving. And apparently when Martin found out that Sue was trying to help with their marriage, he went absolutely ballistic. He was very angry that she had stepped in their business at all. Also, Martin ended up going to Reno, Nevada for a little while after the murders happened. So pretty sketchy to just jump town like that all of a sudden. And at the time, police believed that whoever did this probably didn't act alone. So they started looking at Martin's roommate, actually. His name was John Bobetti. He was actually an ex-con, and he is now considered an accomplice in this case. If Martin was the killer, it really would make some sense because the boys in the other room were left completely untouched. Maybe he didn't want to scare his own son or hurt his own son, so he left them alone in that room. So as time went on, people started to feel like maybe there was some type of cover-up in this case because there was quite a bit of evidence and leads, but there was never any follow-up arrests made or any type of action taken by the police. It seemed like it was just kind of swept under the rug. In 2001, Dana's dad actually mentioned that the police totally screwed up the case by stumbling over each other and making everything even worse. Dana's father actually believes that there could have been a cover-up, and he's not the only one. A lot of people in Keddie believe that something sketch happened that night and the police didn't do a full investigation. The former sheriff, who was sheriff at the time of the murder, Doug Thomas, is accused of being involved in a cover-up. A lot of people think he was close friends with Martin Smart. There was a lot of talk about Doug covering up the situation or pulling strings for Martin, so he finally ended up responding to the allegations. He said, "There was no shortage of suspects, but suddenly now everybody 35 or so years later have all figured out what happened and that all of the investigating officers were corrupt. It is laughable is what it is. Martin Smart was not a friend of mine. At one point, he and his wife were having marital problems, and they came into my office when I was a sheriff and wanted me to counsel them." So what the hell? Why would a struggling couple go to a random sheriff? Like, unless they had a relationship with him and trusted him. So years passed with nothing happening in the case until it was finally reopened by a new sheriff in 2013, so not that long ago. Sheriff Greg Hagwood and investor Mike Gamberg both had personal connections to the victims. And in terms of the police cover-up, Sheriff Hagwood said it brought to light some amazing timeline, histories, and what some may call coincidence. Others may look at it more accusingly. I don't put anything outside of the realm of possibility. So once the case was reopened, some interesting new discoveries were actually made. One of the investigators, Mike Gamberg, was looking over all of the evidence in police files and just reorganizing, taking a second look at everything. And that's when he found a letter that was from Martin to Marilyn. The letter was apparently written soon after the murders happened, and it actually said, "I've paid the price for your love, and now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we're through? Great, what else do you want?" So that seems like a big piece of evidence that was just pushed to the side for years. Marilyn said that she doesn't remember getting that letter, but she did say that the handwriting was Martin's. They also found that phone call with the anonymous tip telling them where Tina's body was. Turns out that the tape had never been analyzed and was actually just boxed up. So I think there could have been a cover-up involved here. They also ended up speaking to Martin's former therapist in Reno, Nevada, and they found out that he actually confessed to the murders. Now, this wasn't something that was just discovered because this therapist actually did report this to police. Like, I mean, there's only so much that a therapist can keep confidential, so murder is not one of them. And he did tell the police, but nothing was done, and he was super shocked that nothing had ever been done with that confession. However, even if they do find out that Martin and possibly Bo, his roommate, did commit the murders, it's too late for justice because both of them have already passed away. Martin died in June of 2000, and Bo died in 1988. So moving forward a little bit, in March of 2016, a man was using a metal detector near a pond in Keddie, and he ended up finding a hammer with a blue handle. This hammer actually matched perfectly with the description of the hammer that Martin said that he lost. Was another hammer used with the crimes and then tossed into the pond? This case is currently being investigated. It could be solved. Investigators right now say that they have actually discovered a few other potential suspects in the case. Investigators actually say they have 6 potential suspects and all of them are still alive. So that's really interesting. I would love to know more about that. As of right now, this has not been solved. No one has been charged. But Sheila said that she's very thankful for the work that's being done currently on the case. She feels like they're working hard on it and hopefully this does get solved one day. What's interesting is she said that they are putting in more work now than they ever have in all the previous years. Sheila does herself believe that Martin and Bo were the ones to commit the murders, and it does make sense. The latest bit that we have is in April of 2018, one of the investigators investigators said that they found some DNA on a piece of tape that was left at the crime scene, and they were able to match that to one of the living suspects. So hopefully they are close to solving this. I mean, it seems that way. The cabin ended up being demolished in 2004. The BuzzFeed dudes went out and looked at it, and it was just pretty much all rubble. They had to do this because so many people were going to go look at it, and it became like a, you know, a little bit of a tourist attraction. So they ended up tearing it down. It's a really creepy case, and it's very weird that it still is unsolved to this day. I'm curious, do you guys think that this case will be solved? Do you think it won't be solved? Who do you think did it? Let me know what you guys think below. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notification bells on so you don't miss any other days of Freak Week. I have 5 more videos coming to you guys this week, so get excited. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a great day. Stay spooky, and I will see you next time.